and number of services that the West End operation served. You'll see at the bottom of that form, there is a comparison between how many services we budgeted by fee-for-service category and what those actual numbers came in at. So there was a reduction overall. In addition, we saw a reduction in ADA from where we originally projected of about 55 ADA. So those two components primarily comprise the reduction of the $735,000. In expenditures, as you know, when we would budget at full staffing levels. Throughout the year, we see quite a bit of fluctuation depending on the number of services we have. So we had $1.9 million over all service categories in reduction of expenditures, all related to salary and benefits. So overall, that brings us down to a $1.2 million ending balance. That's after deducting the $43,000 for early start. That's our infant program. That is not a fee-for-service program, so that money remains in that program. The two pages following the summary page are just the detail by major object code that feeds into the summary document, so I won't go through that in detail. The last page is the proposed return to each district. As you may remember, back in April when we established fee-for-service rates for 15-16, we included utilizing the ending balance of $819,000 as to buy down the rates for 15-16. So of the available $1.2 million, we're holding back the $819,000, which leaves a remaining balance of $465,000 to be returned to the districts in proportionate share of the number of services they received from the county. Any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer. With that, we'll move on to item C5. We do have a public comment card for C5C, G, and H. And Rita, would you like to do all three now, or do one at a time as we get to it? Or?
I'll do one at a time as we get to it.
Okay,
It'd be helpful to see the staff presentation first.
Okay. Let's begin with 5A. Susan?
Okay, and actually, because this is the first reading, since this is the first reading, and this is the first time I was going to bring these all to you, it was not my intent to go over each and every one of them individually, but to give you the opportunity to read them before we come forward for a second reading, with the understanding that I would ask you especially to, well, I'll give you a few tips on how we did this again, like we did the ones last year. Anything in red is new that we got from Gamut online when we went in and looked at that. Strike-throughs are what we would be removing. And anything in yellow, we are asking for the council's opinion on which of the choices in most cases you would like us to choose to leave here, because it gets a little dicey sometimes. Superintendent's council versus governing board, as it's stated in Gamut, because it's written for the perspective of a school district. So I can take some time to go through each of these, or I can let you read them for next time, and we will come back to any questions you have at that point. Okay.
Rita?
First, I had a general comment about the policies and procedures. What is missing in these policies and procedures, and I have yet to see, is a policy and procedure for compliance with the Public Records Act. And maybe Susan can access the services of the attorney to educate her about compliance with the Public Records Act. We've had a lot of problems getting records from this agency, including copies of complaints, which are definitely a matter of public record, because if the Supreme Court can put a copy of the complaint on their website, and if the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal can put a copy of the complaint on their website, I can't get a complaint from the West End SELPA, and the Office of Administrative Hearings does provide the complaints. So we have access to the complaints, but it's the principle of the matter. This agency should be compliant with the Public Records Act. It is a public agency in California. It is not a private agency. And as far as the excuse that is always brought up on child confidentiality and FERPA, that's a straw man's argument. Those complaints do not have the child's name on it. They have a number on it. So that is just, a ridiculous argument. So I encourage that exercise to happen. Otherwise, we'll pursue our administrative remedies or any legal remedy to cure the situation. Specifically on C5C, under transportation, it says the language states currently, if a student requires service to receive special ed, it should be to receive a FAPE. You can receive special education services, and you could be receiving very bad services, which indeed is the case in this West End SELPA. Most children are not really receiving a FAPE, but because many parents don't know what that should look like, and they have bought into the low expectations for their kids, then they simply don't say anything. Indeed, FAPE is the subject of at least 57 disputes that you have seen record of for due process complaints. So that language should be changed to receive a FAPE, because that's what federal law states. Mr. Alejandro, did you want me to go on to CG5?
Sure, that would be fine.
Okay. So, thank you, Karen. For C5G, that's the NPS, the ed codes were stricken. I don't know if they were maybe brought in by reference somewhere else, but I found it interesting that the California ed codes that had appeared there before were now stricken. This is very problematic. The language states that a SELPA program manager must be included. The district must include a West End SELPA program manager in this process in order for the school team to recommend an NPS. You're completely emasculating your district IEP team when you're basically putting the SELPA in, injecting the SELPA, and we already know they don't like NPSs because they don't like any competition because it makes their program look bad. So this is very problematic, and it really takes away the authority of the IEP team. It's supposed to be a local team decision. It's supposed to be that school site where the child is attending. It's supposed to be the educators who supposedly have the best interest at heart for the child to get a FAPE. It's not supposed to be a bureaucrat from a middleman agency who's only interested in their bloated bureaucracies and their overinflated salaries. So that language is very problematic. Page 3, top of the page, the IEP team is now the West End SELPA / IEP team. No student can attend an NPS unless West End SELPA gives the green light. This is too much power to allocate to the West End SELPA. And we always hear, SELPA doesn't have any kids. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth, and when you get to due process and the complaint is filed against the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, he moves quickly to dismiss himself, arguing that he has nothing to do with IEP team decisions. You can't have it both ways. You're either in or out, and if you're in, face the responsibility and take the litigation along with the district. But this is a very comfortable position for the West End SELPA to basically inject themselves into the equation and then walk away at the time of due process and say, district, you're responsible for providing FAPE. And I guarantee you that is what is going to happen. There's a heck of a lot more requirements and hoops for parents to jump through under the rationale for NPS referral. And this is just designed to make it harder for parents who already have a heck of a lot of issues with their kids, and now they have to jump through one more hoop to access an NPS. I'll move on, 5H. I think 5H essentially is mandating a violation of student privacy. Elementary districts notifying the high school districts that students are in an NPS. I don't see anywhere in that policy where it talks about parent consent. WeSELPA is a different agency. It has a different board. It is not the school district. It is a middleman agency. It's a special district. It's not the same district. Just because you all agreed to form, an association of governments doesn't mean that the parent loses their rights under federal law to their child's privacy. You're mandating under this policy that an elementary district has to notify the high school district that the kid is in an NPS without parent consent. So that's definitely problematic. Under the referral process, the district is turning over records to the SELPA without parent consent. And like I said, SELPA is simply a different agency. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, fiscal notification. Tim.
Thank you. Item C6, the fiscal notifications for the month of September are routine in nature and have been previously presented to the Finance Advisory Committee. With that being said, I'll just take the time to point out a couple key notes. Starting with notification A, you can see our year-end update of how the SELPA admin budgets ended the 14-15 school year. And if you can just see the top line of the table provided, the XPOT has a ending balance of $1.2 million. When you subtract the $500,000 reserve, that leaves a $700,000 XPOT return, which is about twice as much as it was the prior year. The reason for the increase in the XPOT return is a couple things. Number one, although the cases did increase compared from one year to the next, the related expenses actually dropped by about 15%. Second, last year was the first year we didn't have CSDR transportation, which is about an $80,000 hit to the XPOT. And finally, there's a ADA piece related to the XPOT when it comes to non-public schools, and the XPOT rate has always been based on prior year, and unfortunately the prior year, although LCFF was still being used, we determined that we would use revenue limit for the XPOT reimbursement. And so the difference between LCFF and revenue limit, there was a big increase from one year to the next. So we took in more money than we budgeted for last year. So with that being said, we do have a later agenda item to decrease the current year XPOT rate for the same reason. Other than that, item F is the fee-for-service return that the county operations previously presented by Jennifer earlier today. And the rest of the notifications are just routine transfers. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Sure.
Move on to item C7. We do have a public comment card. Mo Mendoza.
I'll wait till you guys discuss it.
Okay, we'll move on to C7A. Susan.
All right. You will note the date in the item in C7 is May 29th. Mo Mendoza gave us this letter at the previous Superintendent's Council meeting. And she was asking for a number of items here that I'll read to you. She was requesting that the WeSELPA procedural manual, the IP manual, and also the interim 2003 local plan be translated in Spanish by the WeSELPA. And that it should also be noted in the agenda item that WeSELPA be given 30 days to translate these items from approval of the Superintendent's Council. I have looked into this, and there is no legal requirement, so I just wanted you to know that before you think about this and tell me if you want me to bring it back on a future agenda. There is no legal requirement to translate documents that are designed for teacher and staff use. And so we are obligated to translate items like IEPs, parent notice of meeting, all those sorts of things that are related to the student's education directly. Number two, that the bylaws for the WeSELPA CAC be brought back to be revised, that school districts can have more than one CAC member on the WeSELPA CAC. This will help with more parents and teachers being able to participate and help with any events that the CAC holds. At this time, the CAC does not have enough participants to be able to have enough members to sole run all the CAC activates without staff help from WeSELPA and other SELPA or other school staff or parents. Then she goes on to quote Ed Code, and in the end, if the WeSELPA administrator or superintendent council is not going to adhere to this letter, then within 5 days of this letter, a written response is to be sent to me stating why you will not adhere to this written request for agenda items. So I'm bringing it forward to you to ask if you want me to go ahead, and I will put this on the future agenda, and we can have more of a discussion at this time. I'm bringing forward the request.
So as a point of clarity, is this a discussion to put it on the agenda? Or a discussion of whether or not you think we should do it?
It's on the agenda. It's a discussion of whether to do it or not.
Okay, thank you. So I think for us, our district is kind of the, I guess, author of the request. We have a need.
I can't hear
Can you hear me speaking?
sometimes, but when you
Okay.
turn, no.
Okay, so I think can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, very good.
Stay that level.
Okay, this might be better. Since, our district was kind of the initiator of this request, and I do understand the perspective that the manuals and the documents being requested are used for the staff, in the spirit of transparency. This request actually came as a result of a parent meeting. So parents at one of our town hall meetings at Linda Vista actually wanted to know more about the rules and procedures and norms of how our staff operate, and we didn't have the ability to put it in the Spanish language or their primary language at home. So we would appreciate a consideration and obviously using the SELPA to help us fund this. It's not a low-cost endeavor, particularly with multiple documents and multiple pages involved. So we just want to consider it, and hopefully you guys can concur with that.
Just a point of clarification, can any one of us can ask this be brought back as an agenda item, right? Then I would like to request that.
It is an agenda item for action. Oh, okay.
So we'll put it on December.
Thank you. Let's go to parent comments. We have two.
She had a request for public comment.
Yeah, that's what you do. Public comment, back to Mo, and then I think we have one other parent too that has a C7 comment.
Okay, once again, I'm really offended by Susan's comment that the local plan, the policies and procedures are only for, and these are her words because I wrote them down because I cannot believe you just said this, that they are only for teachers and staff use only, so therefore it is not needed. I can guarantee you and tell you firsthand, the reason why my son got services was I got the local plan, the policy and procedures, I got the IEP manual from the SELPA, I had SELPA employees hand me all kinds of things so I could educate myself on the procedures of the SELPA. Without that knowledge, my son would have gotten no services at all. And the education law specifies when you have a certain amount of language speaking parents of special education kids that you must translate in their language. Okay? The smaller districts, it might not impact them. But the other districts, let me tell you, it is mandated that this stuff needs to be translated because it is needed for these parents. That local plan is needed for the parents if they file due process. It's a helpful tool. So is the IEP manual.